Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your attention. Just want to talk to you a couple of minutes about something that is vital towards the success of your films, and something specifically that we've noticed with regard to the short films that many of you all have submitted for your capstone class. And that's this: is that many of you all are missing strong aspects of conflict. So if you take out your pens, I want you to take some notes, and just for the next couple of minutes, I just want to go over what's important about that. All right. First of all, conflict is essential to drama. All right, and I can't emphasize that enough. That without conflict, there is no drama as far as we are defining it. All right, sure, you can have a no conflict video, which looks like a music video, or what I typically would call a home movie. But the type of narrative stories that we're talking about here, conflict is essential. All right. So where does conflict come from? All right. It can take on many different ways and come on many different forms. All right. It can result from external factors, from within the character, or from a combination of issues. All right, so here's notes number one. All right, first of all, I'm going to just talk about two different types of conflict, or just basically three. The first one is external conflict. All right, this is often person versus person, person versus environment or social institution, or a person versus a task, whatever that is. I mean, this is really the physical action that occurs on screen, all right? It's the shootouts, the car chases, the thrills, the spills, and those are sort of things that entertain audiences. Now, external conflict must weigh a bit more heavily, all right, in terms of like for action-based movies or slapstick comedy, because well, that's the core of why we go to these sort of films. All right, and but however, external conflict in more dramatic movies is less heavy. All right, so in other words, if it's a relationship movies per se, then the external conflicts may not show up as clear. So understand that an external conflict is the physical obstacle that exists in the world of the story that prevents your character from achieving something. I can't emphasize that enough. Your characters must want to achieve something, all right? And it's the physical obstructions in the way that cause the external conflict. That physical obstruction can be another person, or it could be a goal ahead. Like, for example, in the movie Little Miss Sunshine, all right? The external conflict is that the family has to overcome is the distance. They have to travel from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Redondo Beach. So that becomes an external conflict. The second conflict that I want you to write down is this internal conflict, all right? Now, the internal conflict relates to the internal chaos and growth of your characters. And it ultimately relates to the theme of your story, the inner demons of the main character. And this is probably the most important type of conflict as it relates to characters that I want you to learn, all right? Let's take a look at the movie Flight, all right? All right. Denzel plays a character, Whip Whitaker. He's an airline pilot who saved a lot of people, all right? Externally, we see that he has to get over the fact that he is on trial to be a now possible criminal, all right? So he has to get past the justice system. That's the obstacle there. But there's an internal conflict that's going on here that sort of resolves the whole movie. And that's that at a certain point, they blame one of the stewardesses, flight attendants for having alcohol in her system and finding the extra bottles that were in the garbage can. And here, this guy has to struggle with his guilt. Now, he could have easily gotten away with it, but we really get a sense of that internal struggle And that's what really resolves the movie. At the very, I mean, I'm sorry, this is spoiler alert, but at the very end of the movie, when he's just about to be absolved and everything, he can get away with it. This guy's internal conflict is the one that seals the deal and says, I can't do this. That's what we get caught up in. And that's what we are really gravitating towards. So the third type of conflict we're talking about now is what I call a compound conflict. And probably Flight is a good example of that, where you have an external conflict and internal conflict, all right? And this relates how your main characters interact with other characters in the surroundings. And when the main character and the villain, what if they want the same thing? Anger, violence, argument, silence. These are the sort of elements that combine to make this whole compound conflict. And this is what separates good films from great films, because they function on a variety of different levels. This is what we want for you. This is what we want in the senior capstone films. We want you to examine the whole issue of conflict. And I know most of your protagonists in many of your cases will be students. So what is the external conflict they're working with? And then you, as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, must decide what that internal conflict is about, too. Okay, so how does this all relate to visual storytelling? Part of the job of a filmmaker is to present the ideas in a very clear, way, or to the audience. And what I mean by clear is that oftentimes it's the visuals that will help sell the particular conflict. For example, do you think there was a mistake that Darth Vader, the most dangerous man in the universe, would be like almost 7 feet tall, wearing black and dressed in a cape? That represents the difference between him and Luke Skywalker, or Obi-Wan Kenobi, the kindly old man, with the wizened beard, versus this image of evil incarnate. That's what the filmmaker does. He will set up some visual cues to further sell the story. Environment, conflict. Look at, say, Rocky, all right? We have Rocky that broke down, poor environment, and then you contrast that, you conflict that with his nemesis, Apollo Creed, who is this very, I would say using the word shiny, but this very celebratory black man who obviously very polished, who has money, who has charisma, everything that Rocky does not have. As you think about just any sort of movie that has conflict, you need to think about how to visually represent that conflict. All right, so let's talk about in terms of your films. How would you visually represent, say, a student who has no money? Some of you all are going to explore that particular theme in your films. So you have to help the audience by providing visual evidence of the setup of that particular conflict. Let's take, for example, maybe it's, I don't know, the movie Jaws, all right. So it wouldn't have been much of a conflict if the shark was just some, like, teeny tiny beast with teeth, but rather the conflict is magnified by just how huge the shark is. And so that's just one example. And in all of our films, if we think about great conflict, you want to emphasize the physical nature of them. You want to actually show, your mise en scène must have within it all of the elements that are going to contrast. Now here's the thing. You remember, you don't want to be so subtle about this that your audience is bored. Let me repeat that. You don't want to be so subtle, like I don't want to overemphasize that your audience is bored. Because remember what I often say, that people don't make movies about you and I. we like movies where people sort of really push the envelope, where things happen in an extreme. And you do that, and that's why we sit back and watch the movies and say, "Wow, I'm glad that did not happen to me. I'm glad I am not encountering that person. I'm glad I'm not dealing with that situation." So your job is to not make a documentary, all right, but make a fictional film that expands on a particular theme and has inherent in it visual clues to tell us what the conflict is. Now, here's your assignment. Your assignment is to write up it on in 1 to 2 pages. What, first of all, the first section is what are the external and internal conflicts inherent in the story that you're going to write. All right? Clearly define that and tell us what that is. The second part of your assignment is to tell me what visual clues are you going to film that will reflect what that conflict of the conflicts within your film. So in other words, all right, the first part, tell us what the conflicts are. Somebody versus somebody versus this, whatever that is, internal and external. There's some, and then hopefully that will create a complex set of conflicts, or complex set of conflicts. The second part of that, then, how would you visually explain that? Not just people talking. Remember, let's get away from everybody talking about their problems. Your job is to show it. So really expand your mind and tell us what you will actually show that will highlight the conflict in your film. Trust me, gentlemen, if you do this and you follow through with this sort of exercise, you will come out with a much, much, much better film than what you probably initially proposed. And that's the path of the filmmaker. This assignment is to be submitted on turnitin.com, and we'll have it posted in Blackboard, and including the due date. All right? Good luck. As always, I'm available through email if you have any particular questions, and see you at the movies.